Humans watched in terror as the Orion warships loomed above Earth's skies, leaving smoldering craters where cities once stood. Most considered the attacks unprovoked, but in reality, the Orions had a reason to fear the humans, a reason they would soon regret. In a dimly lit chamber, representatives from the Galactic Council argued heatedly. The Orions posed an existential threat, conquering world after world with their psionic powers. Powers granted by an ancient artifact in the hands of their leader, Xander, an artifact with a weakness found only on Earth. The Council summoned Jerry Lewis, a battle-hardened human soldier. They needed him to lead a secret mission. Infiltrate the Orion homeworld, steal the artifact, destroy it. Jerry hesitated until the Council revealed a shocking truth. The Orions had captured his brother, a brilliant scientist. They were forcing him to enhance the dreaded artifact. Jerry quickly assembled an elite human strike team, each member possessing remarkable skills. As he prepared them for the daring operation, troubling questions emerged about the Orions' sudden rise to power, and why they had targeted Earth. The answers could change everything, but one fact was clear: if Jerry's team failed, humanity was doomed. The sleek obsidian hull of the human strike craft sliced through the void of space, its advanced stealth technology rendering it all but invisible to the Orion defenses. Jerry and his team, each handpicked for their exceptional skills, sat in tense silence as they approached the heavily guarded Orion homeworld. The spacecraft broke through the planet's atmosphere, skimming over the sprawling capital city below. Towering spires of gleaming metal and advanced technology stretched as far as the eye could see, a testament to the Orion's might. As they neared the heavily fortified compound housing the artifact, Jerry gave the signal. The team moved with precision, their boots hitting the ground running as they engaged the Orion security forces in a fierce firefight. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, met by the rapid staccato of human weapons fire. The human operatives moved with fluid grace, their superior training and adaptability evident as they outmaneuvered the Orion guards. Breaching the compound, they fought their way deeper into the labyrinthine structure. Jerry led the charge, his mind focused on the task at hand, even as questions about the Orion's motives gnawed at him. At last, they reached the chamber housing the artifact. As Jerry approached, he felt an odd presence brushing against his mind, probing, searching. Xander stood before the artifact, his eyes glazed, his body rigid. "Xander!" Jerry called out, but his brother did not respond. It was then that Jerry realized the truth. The artifact was no mere object, but a sentient being, manipulating the Orions for its own inscrutable purposes. Jerry and Xander engaged in a fierce battle, human strength pitted against psionic might. The artifact's presence grew stronger, whispering promises of power and knowledge in Jerry's mind, tempting him to abandon his mission. But Jerry's will was unbreakable. He fought on, dodging psychic blasts and energy bolts, until he finally reached Xander. With a desperate cry, he gripped his brother's shoulders and shook him, pouring every ounce of his love and determination into breaking the artifact's hold. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Xander blinked, the fog clearing from his eyes. "Jerry," he whispered, his voice hoarse. What have I done?" The artifact pulsed with angry light, its control shattered. But the battle was far from over. As alarms blared and reinforcements poured into the chamber, Jerry knew that their mission had only just begun. As the artifact's control shattered, the Orion forces began to stumble, clutching their heads and looking around in confusion. It quickly became clear that the artifact had been manipulating not just Xander, but a significant portion of the Orion military as well. Jerry and his team seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage against the disoriented enemy. "Jerry, listen," Xander said urgently, his voice strained. "I developed a device that can neutralize the artifact's power. It uses a rare Earth element to disrupt its psionic energy field. But it's in my lab on the other side of the city, in another heavily guarded compound." Jerry nodded, his mind racing. They had to act fast before the Orions regained their composure. He turned to his team, making a quick decision. "All right, we'll split up. Half of you with me. We'll secure the artifact. The rest of you, go with Sergeant Hawkins to retrieve the device from Xander's lab. The team divided, moving with practiced efficiency. Jerry's group fought their way through the compound, facing fierce resistance from the Orion forces still loyal to Xander. The enemy soldiers fought with desperate ruthlessness, as if their very lives depended on stopping the human operatives. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt metal. Jerry and his team pushed forward, their superior training and adaptability giving them the edge in the close-quarters combat. Meanwhile, Sergeant Hawkins led his group towards Xander's lab, infiltrating the heavily guarded compound with stealthy precision. They located the device, a sleek, handheld object that pulsed with an eerie blue light. But just as they prepared to make their escape, an Orion strike team ambushed them, heavily armed and ready for a fight. The lab erupted into chaos, energy beams crisscrossing the room as the two sides exchanged fire. Xander, seeing the dire situation, made a split-second decision. He grabbed a plasma grenade from a fallen Orion soldier and charged towards the enemy, drawing their fire. "Go!" he shouted to Sergeant Hawkins and the others. "Get the device to Jerry!" With a final defiant cry, Xander leaped into the midst of the Orion strike team, the grenade clutched tightly in his hand. The explosion rocked the lab, sending debris and bodies flying. Sergeant Hawkins and his team, seizing the opportunity Xander had given them, fought their way out of the compound, the device secure in their possession. Jerry, having secured the artifact, received word of his brother's sacrifice over the comlink. His heart heavy with grief, he steeled himself, knowing that the mission was far from over. The two groups reunited, making their way back to the artifact's location, determined to finish what they had started. But as they approached the chamber, they found Xander waiting for them, his elite guard at his side. The artifact's power had not been completely broken, and Xander had managed to regain some of his psionic abilities. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and the air crackled with energy as he prepared to face his brother once more. As plasma bolts sizzled through the air and energy shields flared, Jerry and his team clashed with Xander's elite guard in a fierce battle. Fists slammed into armored bodies, bones cracked under the impact of well-aimed kicks, and the metallic tang of blood mingled with the ozone scent of discharged weapons. Suddenly, the artifact pulsed with an eerie, palpable energy that swept through the chamber, enveloping Orions and humans alike in its psionic grip. Jerry staggered, his vision blurring as vivid hallucinations assaulted his mind. He saw his brother, Xander, at different stages of their lives, laughing together as children, arguing as teenagers, and finally, the heart-wrenching moment when Xander was taken by the Orions. The visions shifted, showing Jerry the countless sacrifices he had made in the name of duty. Friends lost, relationships shattered, and his own humanity slowly eroded by the relentless demands of war. He gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his grip on reality, as the artifact's insidious whispers probed at his deepest fears and regrets. Across the room, Xander too was caught in the throes of the psionic onslaught. The artifact's pulses tore at his mind, forcing him to confront the true nature of his actions. He saw the suffering he had inflicted, the worlds conquered, and the lives destroyed, all in service of an entity that cared nothing for him or his people. Doubt and horror filled his heart as he began to question everything he had believed. Amidst the chaos of battle and psionic assault, one of Jerry's team members, a skilled hacker named Raz, fought his way to a control panel. His fingers flew across the Orion interface, his mind racing as he sought to connect with the artifact using a modified device they had brought from Earth. Raz plunged into the artifact's virtual realm, his consciousness pitted against the ancient entity in a high-stakes battle of wits and will. Streams of data and psionic energy whirled around him as he fought to disrupt the artifact's hold on the physical world. Back in the chamber, Jerry saw Raz's body jerk and convulse, blood trickling from his nose as the hacker's mind strained against the artifact's power. But then, miraculously, the psionic pulses weakened and the visions faded. Raz had done it. He had bought them a precious window of opportunity. Jerry locked eyes with Xander, seeing the confusion and regret in his brother's face. "Xander, listen to me," Jerry pleaded, his voice hoarse from exertion. "The artifact has been using you, using all of us. It doesn't care about the Orions or anyone else. It only wants power. Help us destroy it and we can end this madness." Xander hesitated, his loyalties torn between his brother and the entity that had controlled him for so long. But then, with a grim nod, he made his choice. "You're right," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "It's time to end this." Together, Jerry, Xander, and the remaining members of the strike team fought their way through the chamber, Xander now turning his psionic abilities against his former guards. They carved a path towards the artifact's pulsing core, where they hoped to use the neutralizing device to destroy it once and for all. But the artifact, sensing their intent, began to unleash its full might. The air crackled with psionic energy, and reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. Jerry and his team pressed on, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy rested on their success. As Jerry, Xander, and the remaining team members fought their way through the twisting corridors, the artifact's core room loomed ahead, pulsing with malevolent energy. The air crackled with psionic power as they approached, the artifact now fully aware of their intentions. Suddenly, an iridescent energy shield shimmered into existence around the core, a nearly impenetrable barrier that repelled their attempts to breach it. The neutralizing device in their hands seemed useless against this advanced defense. The artifact, its wrath now focused on the intruders, began to warp reality around them. The walls shifted and distorted, and ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, manifestations of their deepest fears and regrets. Jerry found himself face to face with a spectral image of his brother Xander, as he had been before his capture. The apparition's eyes bore into him, accusing and filled with pain. "You failed me, Jerry," it whispered. "You let them take me. You let this happen." Jerry's heart clenched, guilt and sorrow threatening to overwhelm him. He knew it wasn't real, but the words cut deep, echoing his own self-doubt and recrimination. Steeling himself, he pushed forward, his weapon firing into the ghostly form, dispersing it into wisps of smoke. Xander, too, confronted a manifestation of his own demons. Before him stood the image of his father, his features twisted with anger and disappointment. "You were weak, Xander," the spectre hissed. "You allowed yourself to be used, to become a pawn in the artifact's game. You betrayed your own people." Xander's hands shook, his psionic energy flickering as he grappled with the weight of his actions. The apparition's words rang true, and the realization of his role in the Orion's suffering threatened to crush him. But he pushed back, his psionic energy flaring as he focused his mind. "No more," he growled, his power tearing through the manifestation, banishing it into nothingness. As the team battled these emotional specters, the hacker's voice crackled over their comlink. "I've found a weakness," he shouted, his words strained with effort as he continued his virtual duel with the artifact. "The shield fluctuates during the artifact's psionic pulse cycle. There's a brief window where it can be penetrated, but someone will need to physically interface with the core to exploit it." Jerry's eyes locked with Xander's, a silent understanding passing between them. They both knew the risks, the likelihood that whoever attempted this feat might not survive. But there was no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "I'll do it," Jerry said, his voice steady with resolve. "I'm the only one who can withstand the artifact's influence long enough to get the job done." Xander nodded grimly, his own psionic energy gathering around him. "I'll shield your mind," he said. "Give you as much protection as I can." As the team formed a defensive perimeter, fighting off the relentless onslaught of manifestations, Jerry approached the shimmering barrier, the neutralizing device gripped tightly in his hand. He could feel the artifact's presence, its alien consciousness pressing against his own, seeking to dominate and control. But Jerry's will was unbreakable. He had come too far, sacrificed too much to falter now. With a final defiant cry, he plunged forward, the barrier parting before him as the artifact's psionic pulse cycle reached its brief moment of vulnerability. The moment Jerry breached the shield, The artifact's full might slammed into him, a tidal wave of psionic energy that threatened to shatter his mind. He could feel it ripping through his thoughts, tearing at his memories and emotions, seeking to unmake him from within. But then, like a cool balm on a burning wound, Xander's power enveloped him, a shimmering cocoon of psionic energy that dulled the artifact's onslaught. It was not a complete protection, but it was enough. Enough for Jerry to push forward, to drive the neutralizing device deep into the artifact's core. The artifact screamed, a sound that echoed through every mind in the room, a psychic wail of rage and desperation. Reality itself seemed to shudder and convulse as the ancient entity fought for its survival. But it was too late. The neutralizing device pulsed with power, the rare earth element within it unraveling the artifact's psionic matrix, tearing apart the very fabric of its being. Jerry held on, his mind battered but unbroken, as the artifact's death throes threatened to drag him into oblivion. He could feel Xander's presence, a steadfast anchor in the maelstrom, lending him strength even as his own life force dwindled. And then, with a final blinding flash of light, it was over. The artifact shattered, its fragments dissolving into nothingness as the psionic storm abruptly ceased. Jerry collapsed to the ground, his mind and body pushed beyond the brink of endurance. Xander rushed to his side, his own energy flickering weakly as he cradled his brother's head. Around them, the manifestations faded, the artifact's power no longer sustaining their existence. The team members, battered but unbroken, gathered around their fallen leader, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and concern. They had done the impossible, but at what cost? Jerry's eyes fluttered open, his gaze unfocused as he struggled to speak. His words were lost in the sudden wail of alarms and the distant sound of Orion reinforcements approaching. The fight, it seemed, was far from over. As the wail of alarms filled the chamber and the sound of Orion reinforcements drew nearer, Jerry's team sprang into action. They hauled Jerry to his feet, slinging his arms over their shoulders as they made a desperate break for their extraction point. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, the Orion forces closing in. But Xander, his mind now clear of the artifact's influence, stepped forward. He raised his hand, his psionic energy surging outward in a wave of force that slammed into the advancing Orions, sending them tumbling back. "Go!" Xander shouted, his voice strained with effort. "I'll hold them off." Jerry's team hesitated for only a moment before pressing on, half carrying, half dragging their injured leader through the twisting corridors. They burst out into the open air, the sleek form of their stealth craft waiting for them. As they lifted off, Jerry caught a final glimpse of Xander, standing alone amidst the chaos, his psionic energy flaring as he single-handedly held back the tide of Orion reinforcements. Hours later, Jerry awoke in an Orion medical facility, his body aching and his mind foggy. He blinked, the sterile white walls and soft beeping of medical equipment slowly coming into focus. The door to his room slid open, and Xander stepped inside, his face etched with exhaustion and remorse. He stood by Jerry's bedside, his hands clasped before him. "Jerry," Xander began, his voice heavy with emotion, I don't know where to start. What I did, what I allowed to happen, it's unforgivable." Jerry pushed himself up on his elbows, wincing at the pain that lanced through his body. "You were under the artifact's control," he said, his voice raspy. "It wasn't your fault." Jerry nodded, the pieces falling into place. "It was never about the Orions," he said, "and the artifact had its own agenda." Xander met Jerry's gaze, his eyes filled with determination. "I want to make this right, Jerry. I want to forge a new path for my people, one of peace and cooperation. I'm offering an alliance between the Orions, Earth, and the Galactic Council. Together, we can rebuild what was lost and make amends for the suffering we've caused." Jerry considered Xander's words, a flicker of hope kindling in his chest, but he couldn't ignore the years of war and mistrust that lay between their peoples. "I appreciate the offer, Xander," Jerry said, choosing his words carefully. "But trust takes time. We'll need more than words to build a lasting peace." There will need to be negotiations, treaties, and safeguards put in place. Xander nodded, his expression somber. I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove my sincerity. Days later, as Jerry prepared to return to Earth with his team, a message from the Galactic Council arrived. Jerry read the urgent communiqué, his brows furrowing with concern. A remote human colony, on the fringes of known space, had sent a distress signal. They were under attack by an unknown alien force, their defenses crumbling. The Council, impressed by the humans' unique abilities and their success against the Orions, were requesting Jerry and his team to investigate and intervene. Jerry looked up from the message, his gaze meeting those of his battle-hardened comrades. They had barely survived their last mission, and now they were being called upon once again. But as he saw the determination in their eyes, the unwavering resolve to protect their fellow humans no matter the cost, Jerry knew there was no choice to make. They would answer the call, as they always had, and face whatever dangers lay ahead. As the team boarded their spacecraft and set course for the besieged colony, Jerry couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in their struggle. The artifact may have been destroyed, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place, full of unknown threats and challenges. But with his team by his side, and the glimmer of hope for a new alliance with the Orions, Jerry knew they would face whatever lay ahead with the same unwavering courage and determination that had brought them this far. The spacecraft's engines roared to life, and they shot off into the void, ready to meet their next mission head-on. As Jerry lay in the Orion medical facility, his body battered but his spirit unbroken, he knew that his mission was far from over. The urgent message from the Galactic Council, detailing the plight of the remote human colony, weighed heavily on his mind. Gritting his teeth, Jerry pushed himself up from the bed, ignoring the protests of his aching muscles. He had a job to do, and no amount of pain would stop him. As he assembled his team, Jerry was surprised to see a new face among them. An Orion named Zahn, a skilled navigator and technology expert. Xander had recommended him as a gesture of goodwill, a sign of the new alliance between their peoples. Jerry eyed Zahn warily, the memory of Orion plasma bolts still fresh in his mind. But he knew that trust had to start somewhere, and Zahn's expertise could be invaluable in the challenges ahead. As their spacecraft hurtled through the void, the stars blurring into streaks of light outside the viewports, Jerry briefed his team on their new mission. The details were scarce, but the urgency was clear. A human colony, isolated and vulnerable, was under attack by an unknown alien force. Suddenly the ship shuddered, alarms blaring as the hull was rocked by a barrage of weapons fire. Jerry leaped to his feet, his hand already reaching for his sidearm. "Report!" he barked, his eyes scanning the readouts on the ship's displays. "It's a group of Orion ships, sir," Zahn replied, his fingers flying over the navigation controls. "Rebels by the looks of it. They're not responding to my hails." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred and battle-hardened face of an Orion warlord. His eyes burned with hatred as he glared at Jerry and his team. "Humans," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can manipulate us, turn us into your puppets? Xander is a fool to trust you. The Orion people will never submit to your rule." "We're not here to conquer anyone," he said, his voice steady. "We're here to help, to protect those who can't protect themselves." The warlord Krell laughed, a harsh and grating sound. "Lies!" he snarled. "You humans are all the same, but we will stop you. We will show the galaxy the true strength of the Orion people." With that, the view screen went dark, and the rebel ships opened fire once more. Jerry's team sprang into action, manning the ship's defenses and returning fire with deadly precision. In the midst of the chaos, Jerry saw Zahn hesitate, his eyes darting between the rebel ships and his human crewmates. Krell's voice crackled over the comm, urging Zahn to betray his newfound allies and join the rebels. But Zahn's jaw set with determination, and he shook his head. "No," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "I've seen the courage and selflessness of these humans. They risked everything to save us from the artifact. I won't betray that trust. With Zahn's help, Jerry and his team outmaneuvered the rebels, their superior tactics and technology winning the day. As the last enemy ship exploded into a ball of flame, Jerry clapped Zahn on the shoulder, a newfound respect in his eyes. But their victory was short-lived. As they resumed their course towards the besieged colony, Zahn's scanners picked up an anomalous energy reading, hauntingly similar to the artifact they had destroyed. "There's not just one," Zahn said, his voice tight with tension. "There are multiple readings scattered across the galaxy, and they're all activating." Jerry felt a chill run down his spine. The artifact, it seemed, was just the beginning. They had unwittingly awakened a threat that had lain dormant for eons, and now the entire galaxy was in peril. With a grim determination, Jerry pushed the ship to its limits, racing against time to reach the human colony. The stakes had never been higher, but he knew that he and his team would face this new danger head-on, no matter the cost. As Jerry's spacecraft descended through the colony's atmosphere, the scale of the Kiltar attack became apparent. Swarms of alien drones buzzed through the air, raining down energy blasts on the beleaguered defenders. The colony's buildings, once pristine examples of human engineering, now lay in ruins, their walls scorched and crumbling. Jerry gripped the controls, his jaw clenched as he maneuvered the craft towards the colony's main landing pad. "Zahn, what's the status of the colony's defenses?" The Orion technician, his fingers flying over the ship's sensor array, shook his head. "Not good. The Kiltar have already breached the outer perimeter. The colonists are fighting back, but they're outgunned and outnumbered." As the spacecraft touched down, Jerry and his team leaped into action. They charged down the ramp, weapons at the ready, and into the heart of the battle. Energy bolts crisscrossed the air, the sizzling heat of near misses searing their skin. Jerry ducked behind a shattered wall, his team taking up positions around him. He peered around the edge, assessing the situation. The colonists, armed with a mix of outdated weapons and improvised defenses, were putting up a valiant fight, but the relentless Kiltar drones were pushing them back. "Zahn, see if you can boost the power to the colony's energy shields," Jerry ordered, firing off a burst from his pulse rifle that sent a drone spiraling to the ground in a shower of sparks. "We need to give these people a fighting chance." As Zahn worked to modify the colony's defenses, Jerry and the rest of the team surged forward, their weapons spitting deadly energy at the Kiltar drones. They fought their way through the colony's streets, the acrid scent of burnt metal and ozone filling their nostrils. Amidst the chaos, Jerry spotted a group of colonists pinned down by a swarm of drones. He signaled to his team, and together they charged forward, their weapons blazing. The drones fell before their onslaught, and the colonists, their faces lined with exhaustion and grim determination, nodded their thanks. As the battle raged on, Jerry's team made a startling discovery. The Kiltar, it seemed, were not just attacking the colony indiscriminately. They were searching for something, their drones swarming over specific buildings and structures with a single-minded intensity. "They're looking for an artifact," Zahn said, his voice tight with strain as he worked to reinforce the colony's shields. "I've seen this before, on the Orion homeworld. The energy signatures are almost identical." Jerry's mind raced, piecing together the implications. If the Kiltar were after another artifact like the one that had nearly doomed the galaxy, the stakes were even higher than he had realized. "We need to find it first," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "If the Kiltar get their hands on it, there's no telling what they'll do." Leaving Zahn to continue his work on the colony's defenses, Jerry gathered a small team and set out to search for the artifact. They delved into the colony's underground tunnels, following the energy readings on their scanners. As they pushed deeper into the tunnels, the air grew thick with tension. The darkness pressed in around them, broken only by the thin beams of their flashlights and the eerie glow of their scanner screens. Suddenly they found themselves face to face with a group of Kiltar drones, their metallic bodies gleaming in the dim light. The drones, armed with vicious-looking energy blades, surged forward, their movements swift and precise. Jerry and his team met them head-on, their pulse rifles thundering in the confined space. They fought with a desperate intensity, knowing that every second they delayed the Kiltar brought them closer to their goal. In the end, they stood victorious, the broken remains of the drones littering the tunnel floor. But their triumph was short-lived. As they entered the hidden chamber, they found the artifact waiting for them, pulsating with an eerie, sickening energy that set their teeth on edge. And then a figure stepped out of the shadows. A Kiltar commander, its body a fusion of organic and mechanical parts, regarded them with cold, calculating eyes. "You fight well, human," the commander said, its voice a metallic rasp. "But you cannot hope to stand against the might of the Kiltar. Join us, and you will know power beyond your wildest dreams." Jerry, his weapon trained on the commander, shook his head. "I've seen what that kind of power does. It corrupts, it destroys, and I won't be a part of it." The commander's eyes narrowed, and it raised its own weapon. "Then you will die along with all those who oppose us. The artifacts are the key to our ascension, and we will not be denied." Jerry, his finger tightening on the trigger of his pulse rifle, knew that the fate of the colony, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The battle for the artifact, and for the future of all sentient life, was about to begin. The Kiltar commander lunged for the artifact, its metallic claws outstretched. Jerry leaped forward, slamming into the alien with a bone-jarring impact. They tumbled to the ground, grappling fiercely. Around them, Jerry's team engaged the Kiltar drones in a vicious firefight. Pulse rifles crackled, filling the air with the acrid scent of ozone. The drones pressed forward, their energy blades slicing through the air. As Jerry wrestled with the commander, he noticed the artifact pulsing with a strange rhythmic light. Each time his skin made contact with the alien's metallic exoskeleton, the artifact glowed brighter, as if responding to his presence. Realization dawned on him. He pushed the commander away and dove for the artifact. As his fingers closed around the smooth, pulsating surface, a blinding surge of energy erupted from the artifact. The Kiltar commander and its drones froze, their systems overloaded by the sudden pulse. They twitched and spasmed, then collapsed to the ground, their lights flickering and fading. Jerry stared at the artifact in his hand, his mind racing. "It reacts to human DNA," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "These artifacts, they were made for us." The team gathered around, their faces a mix of awe and concern. "An ancient human civilization," Zahn mused, his eyes wide. "One advanced enough to seed the galaxy with these fail-safes." Jerry nodded, his grip tightening on the artifact. "And now we have the key to stopping the Kiltar." They set to work, Zahn and the other tech experts rigging the tunnels with a series of traps and choke points. Jerry and the rest of the team took up positions, the artifact glowing steadily in Jerry's hands. The Kiltar forces, alerted by the commander's sudden silence, surged into the tunnels. Their drones marched forward, a relentless tide of metal and deadly energy. As they entered the kill zone, Jerry focused on the artifact, pouring his will into its ancient mechanisms. The artifact pulsed, and a shimmering wall of energy sprang into existence, blocking the Kiltar advance. The drones pressed against the barrier, their weapons firing futilely. Jerry gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his brow as he struggled to maintain the field. "Now!" he shouted, and his team opened fire. Pulse rounds and energy projectiles, amplified by the artifact's power, tore through the Kiltar ranks. Drones fell by the dozens, their metallic bodies shattering under the onslaught. Zahn, his fingers flying over a makeshift control panel, routed more power to the artifact. The energy barriers intensified, and the projectiles grew in strength, cutting through the Kiltar forces like a scythe through wheat. But the artifact, strained beyond its limits, began to overload. Sparks flew from its surface, and Jerry felt a searing heat building in his hands. "It's going critical," Zahn shouted over the din of battle. "It'll take out the whole colony." Jerry, his face set in grim determination, made his decision. He scooped up the artifact and sprinted for the nearby shuttle bay. "Jerry, what are you doing?" Zahn called after him. "What I have to," Jerry replied, his voice steady. "Get the team to safety, I'll handle this." He leaped into the nearest shuttle, the artifact clutched to his chest. As the craft rocketed out of the colony and into the starry void, Jerry inputted a set of coordinates, his fingers flying over the controls. In the shuttle's cramped confines, the artifact pulsed with an angry, unstable light. Jerry could feel its power building, threatening to tear the small craft apart. As the fleet grew larger in the view screen, Jerry closed his eyes, his thoughts turning to his team, his brother, and the countless lives he had sworn to protect. The shuttle vanished in a blinding flash of light, the artifact's overloading energy core detonating in a cataclysmic explosion. The Kiltar ships, caught in the blast radius, were torn apart, their hulls shattering like glass. On the colony's surface, Jerry's team watched as the sky lit up with the brilliance of a newborn star. They knew without a doubt that Jerry had given his life to save them all. But as the light faded and the debris settled, a new realization dawned on them. The artifacts, these ancient relics of a long-lost human civilization, were the key to ensuring the survival not just of the colony, but of all humanity. And so, with heavy hearts but unwavering determination, they set out to uncover the truth behind the artifacts, to trace the path of their creators and unravel the mystery that could change the course of the galaxy itself. As they boarded their ship and set off into the unknown, Zahn looked out at the stars, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "We'll finish what Jerry started," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "We'll find the answers, and we'll make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain." The ship's engines roared to life, and they shot off into the vast expanse of space, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fight was far from over, but one thing was certain. The legacy of Jerry and his unwavering bravery would live on, a beacon of hope in the darkness of the cosmos. As the artifact's energy surged uncontrollably, threatening to engulf the entire colony, Jerry scooped up the glowing, pulsating object and sprinted towards the shuttle bay. The rest of the team, their faces etched with concern and fear, nodded in agreement. They couldn't bear the thought of losing their leader, their friend. Jerry paused, turning to face his team. His eyes shone with a mixture of determination and sorrow. "There's no time," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. "If I don't do this, the Kiltar will win. Everything we've fought for, everything we've lost, it'll all be for nothing, for—" He stepped forward, clasping Zahn's shoulder. "Zahn, you've proven yourself to be a true friend and a valuable member of this team. Your knowledge and skills will be crucial in the battles to come." Jerry turned to the rest of his team, his gaze meeting each of theirs in turn. "I'm entrusting you all to carry on the fight against the Kiltar and any other threats to humanity and the galaxy. You're the best damn team I could have asked for." With a final nod, Jerry turned and sprinted towards the waiting shuttle, the artifact clutched tightly to his chest. The team watched helplessly as the shuttle's engines roared to life, and the craft lifted off, disappearing into the starry void above. Inside the shuttle, Jerry focused on the controls, his hands flying over the panels as he plotted a course towards the heart of the Kiltar fleet. The artifact pulsed angrily in the seat beside him, its energy growing more unstable with each passing second. The Kiltar ships, detecting the shuttle's approach, opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked past the craft, narrowly missing its hull. Jerry gritted his teeth, his hands tight on the controls, as he wove through the barrage of enemy fire. As he drew closer to the fleet's center, the artifact's energy reached critical levels. The shuttle's interior was bathed in a blinding, pulsating light, and Jerry could feel the heat radiating from the object, searing his skin. In those final moments, Jerry's thoughts turned to his brother, to his team, and to the countless lives he had sworn to protect. He knew that his sacrifice would not be in vain. With a final, defiant cry, Jerry slammed his hand down on the detonation switch. The artifact exploded in a massive wave of energy, engulfing the shuttle and the surrounding Kiltar fleet. Ships disintegrated, their hulls shattering like glass as the energy wave tore through them. The explosion lit up the void, a blinding flash that momentarily outshone the stars themselves. The force of the blast sent Jerry's shuttle hurtling towards a nearby planet, its hull damaged and systems failing. As the craft entered the planet's atmosphere, Jerry struggled to maintain control, but it was a losing battle. The shuttle slammed into the planet's surface, carving a deep gouge in the earth as it skidded to a halt. Inside the wreckage, Jerry lay battered and broken, his breaths coming in shallow gasps. With the last of his strength, he dragged himself from the shattered remains of the shuttle, the fragments of the destroyed artifact scattered around him. As he collapsed onto the alien soil, his vision began to fade. But then, through the haze of pain and exhaustion, Jerry saw a group of humanoid figures approaching him. Their features were obscured by a brilliant light that seemed to emanate from their very beings. As they drew closer, Jerry realized that these figures were not of any race he had encountered before. Their forms shimmered and shifted, as if they were not entirely corporeal. One of the figures knelt beside Jerry, its voice echoing in his mind. "You have fought bravely, Jerry," it said, its tone filled with warmth and compassion. "Your actions have not gone unnoticed." Jerry struggled to speak, his voice a mere whisper. Who are you?" The figure smiled, a gesture that seemed to fill Jerry's entire being with a sense of peace and understanding. "We are the ones who created the artifacts," it explained. "Our civilization has long since ascended, but we have been monitoring the events of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to intervene." It placed a hand on Jerry's chest, and he felt a surge of energy flowing through him, easing his pain and clearing his mind. "You have a choice, Jerry," the figure continued. "You can pass on, joining your fallen comrades in eternal rest. Or you can ascend, becoming part of our collective and continuing the fight against the Quiltar and other threats to the galaxy." Jerry closed his eyes, his mind racing. He thought of his team, of the battles they had fought and the sacrifices they had made. He knew that his fight was far from over. With a deep breath, Jerry opened his eyes, his gaze locking with the figures. "I choose to ascend," he said, his voice filled with determination. "I will continue to fight for the galaxy, for as long as it takes." The figure nodded, a smile playing across its features. "Welcome, Jerry," it said. "Your journey is only beginning." As the light enveloped him, Jerry felt his physical form fade away, replaced by a sense of boundless energy and purpose. He had become something more, a being of pure consciousness and will. Back at the colony, Jerry's team gathered in somber silence, their hearts heavy with the weight of their loss. They had watched from the planet's surface as the Quiltar fleet was consumed by the explosion, knowing that Jerry had sacrificed everything to save them. Zahn stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Jerry may be gone, but his spirit lives on," he said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "We will honor his memory by continuing the fight, by protecting the galaxy from any threat that may arise." The others nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but they would face it together, united in their purpose and their love for their fallen leader. As they looked up at the stars, each member of the team felt a sense of comfort wash over them. Somewhere out there, they knew, Jerry was watching over them, guiding them from beyond the veil of mortal existence. And so, with heavy hearts but unbreakable resolve, Jerry's team set out to face the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that they carried the hopes and dreams of all those who had come before them. The fight for the galaxy's future had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.